that has been the most powerful thing, is just like living my life. And when they ask, it not being a weird thing. It's just like as normal as breathing.
I started to really realise how separate my Sunday life was to my rest of my week, and I questioned if I should even be in the industry.
My drama teacher once basically encouraged me to flirt with producers and go for dinners, and you know, if something happens then. Like, he literally said, as it was just a normal conversation.
It's all very well being Christian in church, but God doesn't call us to preach to the choir. Like, we need to be in the dark places.
I think being sensitive creative types, it is quite hard to not fully take on the negative stuff people maybe are saying, or trying to make you believe as well.
Welcome to the latest episode of the Magnify Conversations. If you're new to Magnify, firstly, welcome. It's great to have you. Magnify is a platform focused on empowering ambitious women of faith to thrive in every area of our lives. I don't know about you, but I sometimes find faith can be really challenging and difficult to speak about in today's world. And that's why we've created this podcast.
The Magnify Conversations are all about bringing everyday, authentic women together to discuss faith, relationships, career, whatever's kind of important that we're speaking about at the moment.
My name is Ruth, and I'm the founder and CEO of Magnify.
And I'm Rachel, and I'll be the host of the Magnify Conversations.
So if you like this episode, don't forget to share with a friend, and most importantly, subscribe to our channel.
Today, we're chatting about how we can uphold our values at work with guests Caroline Ford and Nicole Gomes. Caroline is an actress based in England, and she's best known for her roles in the Netflix series Free Reign and the Amazon Prime series Carnival Row. Nicole is a fashion photographer whose work spans across the portraiture and documentary genres. She's worked with clients such as Vogue and Matches Fashion. So let's get straight into this conversation. So before we get into the conversation, I wanted to just ask you both some quick fire questions. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Caroline, we'll start with you. If someone was to make a book about your life or a movie about your life, what would the title be?
Wow, that's really hard.
Even as I'm asking it, I'm like, actually, this is going to take a lot of thought.
Huge. Okay, so straight away, something about being quiet, but with lots underneath. Like, I don't know.
Quiet, but with lots underneath.
I like that. It's got to be slicker than that. It's got to be.
I mean, your job is not to be a writer, right?
So, yeah, it's clear that I'm.
But we get the emphasis.
That is so hard. Yeah, you go.
What, a book of my life?
Same question.
Yeah,
Oh, wow.
I think.
I don't know, the crazy kid takes on the world.
Oh, yes.
I
Big
love
adventure
that.
for me.
Succinct, clear. Who's someone's work that you're loving at the minute?
So for me personally, I tend to be inspired by people I actually know.
Yeah.
Just like, because it's more real to, as a photographer, like obviously there are so many pictures that I'm like, oh, this photography is amazing. But when I know the person and can speak to them about their experience and stuff, like that's always very inspiring for me. So I have a friend called, his like photographer name is Garçon John, but Jonathan, as I know him. And his work has always been a favourite of mine. And I think because he's just such a lovely human being as well. And I've known him for many years, but his work's just, and like his development recently are just really very inspiring. So yeah, that's
brilliant. Caroline.
So I've been watching, weirdly, a lot of Jessica Chastain because I think I love her style of acting because it's very layered, it's very empathetic, it's very, I think she's quite a compassionate performer. She's very giving. So yeah, I admire her. I would like to emulate her style of acting.
Yeah.
And I think she makes very good choices in the films and the characters she plays. So, I mean, big pipe dream. I'd like to have
I love that. Good answer.
And then the last one, before we get into the conversation, looking back just on life so far, what advice would you give to yourself at the very start of your career?
I would say to myself that I actually have everything I need already. that who I was then was really brilliant. And so weird, I'm getting so like emotional about that. Yeah, I think I didn't realize that I didn't need to mold myself into something else, you know. I just needed to trust that who God had made me was enough already.
Yeah.
And then perform from that place, walk into a room like an audition with that knowledge. And everything would have been so much easier.
Yeah.
But
Thanks
it was
for
nice. It's
sharing
been
that.
lovely to learn that.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that, Caroline. How about you, Nicole? What would you, looking back, right at the start of your photography career, what would you have told your younger self?
You're worth more, probably, just because
It's good.
it's so easy to like second guess yourself. And I think even now, I think I know my value more now, but back then I just thought, oh, you know, I'm just starting out and I'm one in like a million people trying to do this job. So why, like, I'll just take what I can get. But actually, I think I've hopefully learned, and don't want to sound arrogant, classic British, like, you know, humility, but, you know, it's like, actually, you are really good at what you do. So don't play that down and don't accept anything less than what you're worth.
Yeah. Incredible. Both strong pieces of wisdom. We're off to a good start. And so, today we're going to be having a conversation about staying true to our values, and especially in our work. And so my first question is, why is it so important to you that we're having this conversation?
I think it's very hard to stay completely true in the industries that we're in, definitely in the entertainment industry. There's a lot of very loud voices that are kind of telling you to do the opposite, and it's quite easy to get lost in that. So I think it's really important to hear ways of staying true to your values and to your faith, and to just hear people who are living in those industries with faith. I think just hearing about that in itself is enough, almost. Just knowing that it exists.
That's a real thing.
You know, that you can do it.
Yeah.
Actually, and you can do it well and easily you can. It just maybe feels harder than it is. So I think it's really important, this conversation.
How about you, Nicole? Why is it important to you personally that we have this conversation today?
Well, first of all, I think I naively thought I was like the only one that was in the industry that had faith. So, you know, meeting other people, first of all, is like, that alone is inspiring. And I think even just what you said, knowing that it's not easy and actually it's okay to sometimes fall off the path, but have people who can pull you back and have advice and guidance, right? Because even, you know, having this conversation, I was a bit like, oh, do I admit that it's not always been like, you know, I'd love to give advice, but I can't say that I'm perfect in any way. So I think it's a conversation that's so important to have, and to be like forgiving to yourself, be gentle to yourself, and and just support each other, because it's not easy. And we need all the support we can get.
Yeah, so why don't you tell us a bit about what you do, but more so a bit of your story and how you've kind of got into the creative or entertainment industry.
So I guess I've always been like a creative person. I loved photography. I just love capturing memories. I think my memory is terrible, so maybe if I photograph it, then I can remember it better or something. Like, I think it's as simple as that, as in terms of first picking up the camera. And then in terms of the fashion industry, ironically, when I first started, I thought that was like the one thing I didn't want to do, because I was always very anti, you know, these like unrealistic levels of beauty that were portrayed, especially back when I was growing up, the amount of like retouching and airbrushing and and just sort of very selective models, and it's just unattainable. And so I think I was very anti the industry, and that made me think I didn't want to pursue fashion photography. But when I was studying, I realized that my concepts and just the way that I pictured, like the things I wanted to shoot, it was all fashion related. And so, yeah, and so I realized I was like, it's not that I dislike fashion photography. I love it. It's a beautiful art form. It's expression. It's, you know, identity. It's celebration. It's design. It's just, can I use that and be successful so that I have a strong enough voice to change the things that I don't like about the industry? And so that was how I got into it eventually. I was like, actually, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this so that I can push the things that I think are important values and try and bring goodness into it, hopefully.
And
what was a small task?
Yeah, just that small thing on the side. How did that actually happen for you? So, like, okay, so you loved capturing and you were taking pictures, I guess, kind of just because you loved to do it.
Yeah.
Where did that become like, okay, I'm working for X, I'm working for Y?
Just very organically. I think I've always said I feel bad when people ask me advice for like how to get into industry, because I'm like, I don't know, pray. Like, I guess because I don't think I ever at one point was like, oh, I could never make it, but I equally didn't think, oh, I'm definitely going to be a photographer. I just kind of took every day, each step as it came, and it's just what I love. And I think that is the feedback I get from people I work with, whether it's clients or the people I'm photographing. They just say that my passion is just so evident, that I love what I do, that people want to work with me, people feel comfortable being photographed by me. So, you know, I did the very traditional route of, I was in school, I chose to study photography at university. I went to assist for a little bit in LA with a photographer who I'd met through my brother, Ben Cope. Shout out to him, he's great. And and I got back to London, and I thought that I would have to, you know, get like a regular job for finances and sort of do photography on the side. And I had a little chat with this photographer that I was introduced to by one of my university lecturers. And he was like, well, it sounds like you've got a few clients already. I think just move to London, like with some, you know, if you've got like enough money for rent for like 3 months or something, just go for it. Like, try being freelance like straight away, which I'd never even thought was a possibility. And it was like so mad, because I don't think this happens for many people. And this is why I said it's God. Like, I'm very fortunate that I'd, you know, come from a background where I could save up enough money for 3 months rent in London. And yeah, the work just came, and I usually get work from like word of mouth recommendations. I think I used a lot of like social media as well to like put my work out there, and people responded to that, and it's kind of just that snowball effect. I fell in love with seeing behind the scenes and really seeing the whole process of the fashion industry, from like design, like right from like listening to designers talk about their influence behind, all the way through to like, you know, the shows, casting and production, doing like the shoots for the lookbooks. Like, I don't know, I do love the industry. It's great. I could talk about it forever.
And we can talk more about it. Caroline, how about you? Kind of, what's your story of getting into the entertainment industry? Is that something you always wanted to do?
I think yes, it was. When I was very small, I performed all the time. All our home videos are just me like dances. And then throughout school, I danced. So I did ballet from like the age of 4. And I did all the school plays. But I was also painfully shy, like very shy, especially in secondary school. And so when I left school, I wasn't confident enough to apply to drama school or anything like that, even though deep down I wanted to be an actress. That was like the dream. So then I went to university. I did history of arts in Andrews, and but I did loads of plays there. And I realised that I was like focusing more on my plays than on my degree, because that's what I loved doing. That has always been where my passion is, performing. It's definitely not linear.
I think that's normal though.
Yeah, it is normal, but it's so frustrating. I wish it wasn't normal. I wish.
Wouldn't be as fun if it was that simple.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I've chosen this life. But yeah, so I got a show that was supposed to be like straight to series. We were going to do the whole show. Turned out to just be a pilot. Got cancelled. So that was heartbreaking.
Yeah.
But it was cool because it was a huge break at the time. So it gave me a confidence boost. Then I did some smaller things, some guest stars in American TV shows. And then I came back, did Carnival Row, did Through Rain. And so I've just been working as an actress since then.
It's amazing.
So that's my story.
And at what point did you come to faith?
So I grew up in church.
Okay.
My parents are both Christians. My dad actually wasn't a Christian until he married my mum. I think in secondary school, I struggled a bit in secondary school with just, figuring out who I was and friends and all of that kind of stuff. And church was a real refuge. I really found, there was a great youth leader at my church, and it was quite a private thing because I was at that time quite quiet. But I really formed a close relationship with God when I was a teenager. And I had some incredible prayer moments with people in church. And then I went to university, didn't go to church. So I lost it a little bit. But I always believed. I just didn't, there wasn't a good, I didn't find a church I clicked with out there. It was, that was my first experience actually of a bad experience with church, where I was like, if I went to this church, I would not have faith, because I do not like what you're saying. It was really interesting. I think very good for me to see.
Good that you didn't force yourself then.
Yeah, great. Yeah, I would never have, it just wouldn't have been good. And then I think in my 20s is when I really cemented my relationship with God. And I learned how to pray. I think that's when I really actually learned how to pray, which has changed everything. And actually, I would say there's this lovely lady called Janie Cronin, and she went to St. Mary's, the church I go to, and she saw me because I sit at the back. I would come in and leave.
Speak up.
I'm such a I was. Now I sit in the middle sometimes. But she saw me and she took me under her wing a bit, and she invited me to this prayer group. And it was with these very lovely, normal girls, and I would just pray in my head, for a long time, and it was very safe. And then eventually I started saying some things and listening more, and I learned how to hear God, and it was life-changing. Wow. From that moment, addicted to praying.
And then just moving into, obviously at this time you're also acting, and you're doing different things in your career. It's beginning to build, and you enjoy it, loving it, seeing fruit. What have you had challenges just in sharing your faith? And the reason I say that is, in the entertainment industry, there's so much going on, so many opinions. There's lots of different things, amazing things and difficult things too. Did you ever experience any difficulties just sharing your faith in that space, or what has that looked like for you? I guess maybe is more of the question.
Yeah, I suppose yes and no. I've had both experiences. The way I live is I like to show God through my life, and rather than shouting about it. I think if people don't ask, they don't want to know. Do you know? And I don't want to force anything on someone who actually doesn't want the conversation. But I think God is amazing and opens those conversations up quite often, especially if you just live a life that's compassionate and loving and kind. I think it's really rare in the entertainment industry. And when I was thinking about this today, I was like, God, compassion is such a amazing weapon in this very brutal industry, because you don't see it that often. And so I think just trying to be non-judgmental, all these things, so then the conversations do happen. I have found, I've had a few jobs where I think because you get to meet so many different types of people, they don't expect you to be Christian, for sure. So you form deep connections and bonds and friendships, and then I'll find we'll just be having a conversation about something, and it will come up very naturally. Be like, I'm going to church, or got my prayer group, or something, and they're like, wait, the double take. What do you mean? What kind of prayer? But it's great because they already know me, you know, and then it's not weird.
Yes. Yeah.
And I think God works so well like that. And that in our industry especially, I think that has been the most powerful thing, is just like living my life. And when they ask, it not being a weird thing. It's just like as normal as breathing. I pray, you know, I live my life this way. God is very important to me. And then I've had incredible conversations. I did a commercial once with this guy, and we were just hanging out for like 3 days in Budapest or somewhere like that. And at the end of it, we'd just been chatting, because you have all this time. And he came to church and he got prayer. He wasn't Christian at all. I don't know if he's ever been back, but he had like a lovely experience of God that just happened very naturally. I have also had some weird ones. There are some people who don't react well, and that's, I used to take it very personally, and I try not to now. People have some really odd preconceptions about,
of course,
Christians. I definitely had a girl who asked me if I thought the world was 5,000. She was like, I just can't believe that you think the world's 5,000 years old. And I was like, I don't. Did I say that? Because that's what she'd been brought up to think. So she just, I'd known her for a bit. She just assumed I had these weird thoughts. So, and that was actually quite hard. I found that hard not to be offended. And to just try. I don't think I was actually that graceful in that moment, unfortunately. but I tried to be. I tried to be. That's cool. So yeah, it's been okay, the faith thing. I've not had, I mean, I think it has probably affected just my way of being. I think is very different to the way most people are in the industry. And sometimes I don't think that works, and I'm sure I've lost out on some things because my energy didn't match. And,
probably wasn't meant to be though.
Yeah, absolutely. So.
Yeah. Nicole, what about you? What's that been like for you? So in the like fashion photography world, what's it like for you, either where you're sharing your faith or just even your personal values, and how does that all work?
I mean, similarly, I don't like shoving it down anyone's throat, but yeah, I think often they'll just come the question like, oh, what are you doing this weekend? I'm like, oh, you know, this, that, going to church. And people are like, sorry, what? You're going? Like, oh, you go to church? Like, yes. So you're a Christian? Yes. Like, and you go like every week? But nothing like massively negative. I feel like maybe if anything, maybe people walk away and they're like, oh, that's really weird. But I don't think anyone's, you know, said to my face like, oh, we can't be like working together, or I can't talk to you or anything like that. So I've always been quite open about that, and I don't feel any shame in sharing, which is a good thing. And I didn't realise that actually for a lot of people in their workplaces, they don't feel confident sharing those things. But luckily, I'm not ashamed of who I am, and like, if anything, like I'd love to share that side of, well, it's not that side of my life, but you know, that part of me. And it's been really lovely because sometimes, so there was this one time actually where I was contacted by Levi's, and they said they wanted to like gift me some jeans, and I was just like, oh, okay, they've seen a model on my Instagram. Right. They think that I'm that person, and now it's like, really, I should fess up and be like, oh, sorry, you've got the wrong gal. But I was like, I want the free jeans.
Yeah, of course.
Absolutely. So I was like, of course, I will come.
You did like, what all of us would have done, Nicole, in that moment.
Right. So I was like, I'm going to go get my jeans. So I go there, and they're like, oh, Nicole, like, we love your photography. And I was like, wait, what? You actually, you know I'm the photographer. Okay, well, this is really weird, but all right, like, you want to give me the jeans, I'll take the jeans. Got the jeans. And then as I was leaving, the girl was like, oh, so what are you doing tonight? And at the time I was going to this like midweek like church creative like gathering thing. So I was like, oh, I'm going to this church thing. And then she was like, oh, cool, what church do you go to? And I was so taken aback. Like, you know, usually people are like, what, you go to church? I was like, what, you want to know what church I go to? Like, that was such a normal response. And so I was like, oh, you know, I go to this church. And she's like, oh, cool, yeah, I've been there a couple of times. And I was like, sorry, are you Christian? And it was just so funny because usually I'm like, oh, why are you so like, you know, bothered that I'm Christian? And there was me being like, you're a Christian in my industry. What are you doing here? Where did you come from? Like, what is happening? Am I on like a prank show? Like, it was so funny. And she was like, oh yeah, no, I'm Christian too. And I was like, there are more of us in this industry. I can't remember what your question was now. Oh, yes. So talking about faith in industry. So yeah, so sometimes it's been really wonderful. And then she ended up coming along to some of these like creative Christian nights and like, yeah, it was so lovely. And so, you know, sometimes it's like, actually, I have like friends that I can talk about work that I can actually talk about my faith in the same conversation. And then on the other side of things, so I think, working with like models, especially like young females, I wouldn't say I'm a very motherly person in general, but I maybe more big sister vibes. Like I want to take care of them and look after them, especially because, you know, I'm not in front of the camera, but I understand, or I can understand on a level the pressure. I mean, any female goes under to look a certain way, let alone when it's literally your job and that is the thing that people are judging you on, and whether you like book something or not. It's like, how do you not take that personally? How does that not affect your ego, your confidence? And so seeing like, you know, working with girls who are, you know, 17, 18, like so impressionable, I just want to like make sure they're okay. I think that really sadly sometimes agencies should be that for models and they're not, because they're more interested in getting work and making money. And so whenever I'm working with new models, I'm always like, if we have a connection, I'm always like, you know, feel free to contact me if you have any questions about industry, jobs, like anything, or you just want someone to chat to, some support or advice. Like I always try and offer that. And you know, and I've found some models have responded to that really like gratefully. And I remember there was this one girl, and she was like, what, like, why? Like, why are you being so nice to me? And like, I was like, I don't know, I guess it's just like my nature. Like that's, you know, I just want to, and then eventually got to talking about being a Christian, and she was saying that actually she comes from a Christian background, but she'd not been to church. So she was American, like who'd moved to London, not been to a church. So I was like, oh, come to church with me. And I was glad to be able to be someone in industry who she knew was normal and kind of like understood that there is a side of like, you know, partying and alcohol and like all this like madness, and to know that someone wasn't going to judge her for that and can actually talk about God and church and and so I think, like you said before, it's like you don't know whether you're going to have a lasting impact, but even if it just made a change in that moment in that person's life, just to have those simple conversations and to like connect on that level, I think that's a really, it's a really wonderful and special thing. And I'm always grateful to God for giving me those opportunities, because you know, like I don't go looking for it, and I don't purposely try and be like, well, if you follow my Christian like lifestyle, you know. So so yeah, like when there is the opportunity to share, I'm very like thankful. Sometimes I feel really bad because I'm sometimes like, oh God, I don't think I said the right thing, or
overthinking the
conversation. For sure. It's like, oh, I should have, you know, dragged them to church kicking and screaming. You know? But actually, it's like, it's not about us.
No,
it's like, we don't have to be the salesman or like pitch like Christianity or church to people. Like God is going to do God, and we're just vessels to sort of, you know, open doors and things. So.
And you will have been so I feel like I've had people, I wish I had more of those people, you know, in my life who've done that. I think it does make a huge difference, and that you don't know.
Yeah, for sure.
And Caroline, you said you just love to perform, and so you love doing what you do.
Yeah.
But obviously, we were just talking about it then, like there is a darker side to the entertainment industry as well.
Definitely.
Can you just tell us a little bit about your experience with some of that darker side as well, and how that's impacted you?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I've had a lot of experience with it. I think so I'm mid-30s now. When I started, I was 23. It was a different time, pre-Me Too. These conversations were not happening. And it was quite confusing. Being a young girl in the industry, I got a lot of advice my drama teacher, he once basically encouraged me to flirt with producers and like go for dinners and if something happens, then like he literally said as it was just a normal conversation, which is insane now. And so, but that was kind of what you thought you had to do at that time.
They make it normal.
The conversation.
Normalise it.
It was totally normalised.
Yeah.
And so I would have coffees with producers and, to network. But then it would be like, well, do you want to go for dinner as well? And they'll be like, okay. And then have dinner and nothing ever happened in that sense, but it definitely was borderline and it wasn't a safe environment. I just did it because I thought I had to, which is terrible. I spent a lot of time in LA as well. I spent quite a few years there, and that's a really interesting place. There's a lot of great stuff there. There's a lot of, there are a lot of amazing people. I think it's actually weirdly, there's a lot of desperate searching for spirituality, for God, for sure. They're just looking in the wrong places. And I was drawn in, definitely. I used to, I still, I like to drink. I like to have a nice, go to a good party, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And I like having my faith within that. Because I think it's good to kind of show, you can have faith in lots of different ways. But when I was younger, I definitely made some questionable choices, for sure, especially in LA, because you're just surrounded by it. But what was incredible, and I think I'm really thankful actually that I had those experiences, because the grace I felt, and the love from God when you sorry, oh my gosh,
okay.
I'm so worried every time. I wish I wasn't such a crier.
It's okay.
You're in good company, don't worry. I'm going to cry as soon as you start crying. I'm going to cry. We're going to be crying.
Let's together. Great. Let's just cry. But yeah, I had. God had put around me some incredible people, especially some women, and I was so covered in love and prayer, and I felt like my relationship with God. Sometimes I've done things I absolutely regret, but then the prayer I've had that next day or whatever has been the deepest connection I've probably ever felt with God, because God is there so deeply when you need him, and it's just love, and it's just forgiveness and grace and good, and just and that feeling is so powerful. And so I love that I've had that experience, because I know that God is good. I know that I can go and hang out with people who are doing whatever they're doing, and I know God loves them. And it's and God made everyone. I think those experiences have taught me to look at people as creations of God. And we are all I remember I had this profound realization once that everyone is a soul. And it's such a weird, simple thing. But I remember walking down the street and I'm like, God, that's just completely changed the way I look at every single person on the street, because every one of you is a soul made by God and loved. And so I've had a lot of dark experiences in the industry. I've had there's a lot of sexism. There's, a lot. Understatement. And definitely was, I've been told to wear tighter tops, wear more makeup, that the reasons I'm not getting jobs is because I'm not sexy enough. Literally,
I think you're very sexy.
Thanks.
Not that it's about
Thanks, guys. I think you're very sexy too. Thanks, okay. So are you. You're very sexy.
Sometimes we just got to pump each other up.
Yeah,
Right?
we got to do it. Let's build it up. But yeah, so there's been a lot of negative stuff. It does celebrate the wrong things sometimes. So it celebrates some dark things. And I think not having that is hard. And there's been some difficult choices that I've had to make. And I think being sensitive creative types, it is quite hard to not fully take on the negative stuff people maybe are saying, or trying to make you believe as well. I'm going on quite a lot. Can I tell one story? Okay.
Oh, that's great.
I remember having dinner with a director once on something I was working on, and the character was not like a really sexual character in any way. She was just very interesting, and I'd come up with my whole, backstory, and I knew the character very well. He had come on, we went for dinner to talk about the character, and he told me for the whole dinner basically the sexual history of my character, how how she was obsessed with all this. It was just like dark. It was dark. He was dark, and it threw me. I didn't sleep for a few days. I just felt like off. But then I prayed, and I journaled when I was praying, and that perspective shift was so huge and really, really powerful, because God was basically like, this guy doesn't have God. He doesn't have me. He's not talking to me. He's lost, and he's looking in the wrong places, and that's what he believes. It's not what you believe. You don't have to take that on. You don't let his darkness take away your light. Stick with yourself. It's enough, and it just took his power away. God just took his power away in me in that moment, and it was really, really magical.
Sounds really freeing.
Really freeing.
It's our privilege to have these meaningful conversations, and we hope you're enjoying them. As a registered charity, it's thanks to our generous donors and partners that we're able to bring the Magnify conversations to you, and we know there is so much more ahead. If you've been impacted by any of the chats we've had with these amazing women and want to continue seeing them, why not consider supporting us?
You can find out how to by visiting www.magnifycollective.com/donate, and then financially giving in any way you feel led to. We're so grateful to you for being with us in this season, and we hope you find real value in this episode. Nicole, in your experience, have you talked a little earlier about just sometimes even just working with younger, more impressionable younger women that you felt you've needed to be the big sister to. I love that, by the way, but that's that kind of protective nature. But for you personally, even in when you've been on a job, has there ever been anything where you're asked to do something and it literally it's diametrically opposed to your values? And what do you do? I mean, what would you do in that situation?
I don't think I've ever directly been asked to do anything. I think the closest to that would probably be where a brand has said, "Oh, we want to hire you because we need more women, and obviously you're attractive and young." And I was like, "Oh, okay, cool." It wasn't. I'm just very blunt, and I was like, "Okay, sure." I get it. I understand marketing, but did we need to sort of tell me that's why I'm getting the job? Do I want it now? But no, beyond that, I don't think there's been anything so directly awful. But for sure, there's been more than numerous occasions where I've had to experience, I have experienced not so pleasant things. And I guess, now that you've said that, that is probably why I feel so protective over the younger females in industry. And I think, so I think I was very naive, when I was younger, probably still am a little bit. And I think because being a photographer, you don't think anyone's looking at you. Right. I'm not the model, I'm not the talent, I'm not there to be the attractive female. So I didn't think that like that men were looking at me in that way, or like, you know, well, as in at least not in the workplace. So I guess I was naive. So when, you know, guys in positions of power would be like, oh, you know, come to this, and like, oh, drink some more alcohol, or like, oh, like come to my hotel or whatever, like, and to talk about work and stuff, I'd be like, oh, great, yeah, let's do that. Like, you know, super naive, and just thinking, because I was so career driven, and I don't think of myself as, you know, this, well, however they were thinking of me, basically. And so, yeah, I've unfortunately got into situations where I'm suddenly realizing far too late what is happening. And then I'm like, how did I get here? And then you start to blame yourself, because you think, oh, well, no, it's because I should have known, or you know, all these things which no one should ever have to feel. And especially because like growing up, although I've always been Christian, I didn't have a Christian community. I went to church on my own. So when I started out in industry, I didn't have like Christian friends. So you know, it's that thing we were saying earlier, where when you're in a environment where these things are normalized, and you know, people are saying, yeah, you know, it's fine, doesn't matter, like go for it, like then you're just like, oh, like, okay, yeah, it's really bizarre. And I think that I'm very lucky that whilst I didn't feel like I had the support at the time, clearly something in me was always saying, just keep going to church, like stay close to God, pray, like, you know. I don't think that there was definitely, you know, a good chapter of the start of my career where I was going to church, but it wasn't like, it was definitely, this was my work life and this is my church life, and they were two very separate things. And I remember getting to a point thinking, like, how do I bring these two parts of my life together and be my one life, because I don't want it to be separate. It was like the weirdest thing where every week I was going to the Box in Soho watching like weird right? It's like it's a normal thing, like these like really weird like sexual acts which people are just like, oh ha ha, let's dance now, and it's like, okay, like I don't, and I'm like, this is so weird, I have to be up for church in like 3 hours, like it's so bizarre how normalized it is, but I'd still go to church. Like sometimes I'd turn up to church and I'd still have glitter on my face from the night before or whatever. Luckily God has didn't put shame on me to like feel like, oh, I shouldn't go because people. No, I just went. I was like, no, I need to be here now.
No shame.
But how do I make church and God come into my whole week and not just be in Sunday? How can He be in my work life and in these dark places? So yeah, it's definitely been a journey, and one like lessons that I didn't learn quickly. Unfortunately, some mistakes were made like multiple times before I was like, actually, like I need I need to figure this out. I need support. I need that. Yeah. So yeah. I mean, I feel like it took a long time, but that's why now that I know who I am, I know my values, I know what should and shouldn't happen, and like that's why I feel the need to support others. Whether it's and it doesn't have to be young people, because you know, people our age or older, like they experience this too. I hate actually saying like I was naive, because I don't think it's even naivety. It's just innocence.
Yes.
You know? Yeah. It's like, why should you assume that people are thinking like dark things? Like,
and
like
openness and goodness.
Yeah, actually, you know, God asks us to be childlike. And I think part of me is quite sad that I have this cynicism, you know, now when I meet certain people in industry and I'm like, okay, I know where your brain's at. And actually that's kind of sad, because I'm probably right 99% of the time, but I wish it wasn't. But it exists, you know? And I think now I have the wisdom to see it before it's like,
down the road.
Down the road, exactly. But yeah, I think that's why it's really important to have these conversations, because we shouldn't have to get to that point. We should be able to protect each other and to eliminate it, hopefully, and make those things like not happen. Like, I think like communication about it, it just takes away the fear of speaking out and like actually, being able to be yourself and do your job and just be there for what that's about and not let anything else interrupt that, which doesn't need to happen.
Yeah. I think for so many people as well, so many of us, staying true to our values is okay, like most of the time, 99% of the time. But then I guess there's always that 1%, especially when it comes to work and different jobs, where you may be in a position where it's like, okay, well, I'm doing what I love and I need to be paid, right? This is work. And that may be like in a conflict of, I kind of need to do this job, but I'm not sure how I feel about it. Does it conflict with my values? Caroline, do you have any experience of that where it's kind of like, you said you love to perform, this is the industry you're in, and clearly God is using you there too, but where you feel that inner conflict of, do I do this? Don't I? And just practically, what do you do in that situation?
Yeah, it's really hard. I have had a few situations where it's not been easy to know whether or not to do a job. I think I've had to learn what what my boundaries are.
Yeah.
Because I don't think it's clear cut, actually. I think there are stories that it's worthwhile telling. Also, I think, maybe the story isn't that great, but the people you're going to meet in that process is actually really good, and you can be used there. I think God probably does, he makes good of everything, so there's that. So for me, my main thing has always been around like nudity. That's the tricky one in being an actress. When I was younger, there was a lot more of a push to do it.
Right.
And I think I had some not great voices around me that were really encouraging it as if I had to, So there were a few jobs where I did a little bit, and I actually had a really terrible job where I had to do a sex scene. And it was no nudity, but they like photoshopped it afterwards a bit, so it looked like I was nude.
Wait, what?
Yeah, this is pre-Me Too, pre all the stuff. Yeah, really, really terrible. Really terrible. And that was pretty scarring. And it was only like, it was 2 seconds, whatever, but no, not whatever, it's terrible. But it showed me actually how I felt pretty clearly about nudity. Because what happens when you do those scenes is they end up on like porn sites. There's like porn sites just for movie scenes. So even if the scene is pretty appropriate for the film, it will end up there. And like, that's what made me be like, okay, I hate that.
Oh my
like
gosh.
I don't,
That's awful.
I really think we're too obsessed with, that's a whole other conversation. But I don't want to be part of that. So then now I don't do those kind of things.
Clearly I am naive, because I had no idea that.
It's really gross. It's really horrid.
That sucks, because that's like, I mean, some sex scenes can be
Yes,
very
and sex
beautiful
scenes
and
can-
artistically and tastefully done. Like,
Absolutely.
So that's really sad that it's then.
And some sex scenes, I'm not anti-sex scenes. I think some of them are very beautiful. Yeah, they are beautiful.
yeah.
The human body's beautiful. Sex exists. It's like, unfortunately, it's so, we have to talk about it. I feel like it's a bit of a taboo with church stuff, which that's another conversation.
Thank God made sex,
And I think we need to talk about it more, because there's a lot of, I don't know, shame and guilt and stuff around it. That's really, I think probably because that's not talked about. So I definitely believe in that. But so I've had a number of, there's been some really great opportunities that I haven't done.
So you have turned them down based on your values?
Yeah.
But that's not always easy though.
No, it's really hard.
And it's a luxury as well to be able to say no.
It's a real luxury. And
that's fantastic.
now, when I'm in quieter periods, I'm like, should I have done that?
Yeah.
You know, and you'd question it. But I feel like God has protected me there.
Yeah.
And when I'm in that mood where maybe I would have said yes to something I shouldn't, those opportunities have not come along.
Yes.
You know? And I try and just pray. Sometimes it is quite hard to assess what God's saying in those moments, because it's conflicting, because you want to work. But I just always imagine myself on set doing that stuff, and I'm like, no. That's
well,
not
you know yourself now,
yeah,
so.
I know it. I know it now. But I did have to learn that. I didn't always know that. So
thanks for sharing that. And Nicole, when you were speaking earlier, I was thinking about you talking a lot about like your support system and your community. Obviously, you're doing what you're doing, you're loving it, you're thriving. Like, what, in terms of support and community and friendships, what kind of holds you in and keeps you healthy in that? You know, when things are dark, like what actually brings you hope and light in terms of like friendships and support? What does that look like for you? Because, you know, you were telling that story earlier about you met someone and they're like, what, you're a Christian? Like, what? Like, you say that reaction. Oh my goodness. And that's not very common. So where do you kind of have that support and friendship and that mutual understanding as well?
I mean, my biggest support system is my husband, who actually, through meeting him, that really like deepened my relationship with God, just because of sharing, like having a relationship like that where you're so vulnerable and you like connect on that spiritual level, like it's amazing. So he's been a huge part of my support system, even with work, though he is very clueless about fashion. And he won't mind me saying so. I say it too much, maybe. But yeah, other than him, my friends in church. So when I said about that story about meeting that girl in an industry, that was very much like, you know, probably at least 5 years ago or something. So now I'm less shocked when I meet other Christians. Still a little bit, but now, so I go to this church in Shoreditch in East London, and it's like full of creatives. No fashion photographers, but definitely some models, stylists, like people working in sort of like buying and stuff like that. So yeah, it's really nice because they're my church friends, but they are in industry. We don't necessarily work together. I think maybe once or twice we might have, you know, ended up doing a job or something, but they're like, I know them from church rather than through work. Sadly, I don't think I've met any Christians in work that are still sort of very present in my life, just because of the nature of London and people going in and out of the city and sort of also the industry. But I've definitely got people who are my like close circle that I know I can turn to. I know I can ask for prayer, especially when, you know, sometimes you feel like I can't even pray for myself because I'm just so tired, or I don't have the energy, or and it's like, can you pray for me, because I just can't even bring myself to like do that. And having that support is wonderful and just priceless. Like I know there's that sort of image of that one of my friends always says about, like we're like leaky. It's like we need to be like refilled. So there's definitely times where say I've been traveling for work and I haven't been able to go to church, and I'm like, when I get home, I'm like, I need to go to church. Like I need to refill, my soul like needs it, because you know it can be like, whilst you should be able to do that on your own and, you know, not just on a Sunday, like sometimes you do just need to be in the surroundings where everyone is on the same level as you, and you can just like lean on them, and that's okay, you know. It's like, it is hard, and we're not called to do life like completely isolated and stuff. So that's my that's my how I get through this.
And that's so helpful. And Caroline, for you, like, what and there were great times too, but in those more difficult times, where have you had that kind of support and input, even if it's not people who are in the industry, but just that, knowing that when you're maybe questioning yourself and all of those things that you said, even like you say, as more sensitive, creative types or empaths, just absorbing other people's feelings about you or what you should be doing. How have you navigated that, and who's been there for you in that?
I mean, I think, I also have a very strong network of amazing women who have supported me through those times. So I have my soul's friends. That's what I call them. They're like my soul friends.
Soul.
I love them. And I think that we are, you can have your soulmate and your husband, but like your soul friends, like who I feel like God gives you as gifts. And I have, so there's a girl who I met, it's my friend Carmela. We met when we were 27. And we've kind of grown in our faith together. She wasn't a Christian, and then she became one, and like she's literally changed my life, I think, because we pray together all the time. We just know each other. We know all of the stuff that we've been through because we've prayed about it. I have another friend called Taryn who I know whenever I need, she will literally just pick up the phone and just pray with me. So I've had that so many times where I've been exhausted. I've not been sleeping because it's too much or it's just been very hard. And then someone will pray with me. I'll just call them and just listen and just take, just let God just wash over me. And it does change everything, knowing that you don't have to do it. We're not designed to do it by ourselves. We need the support. And so I think I have a few prayer groups as well that I that have formed in the last sort of 6 years of my life, and I know I can just message them and they will pray. And people just send really encouraging pictures, or God always provides that support. I've found I never feel alone in it. There have been times when I've tried to just get through it by myself and not asked for help. Which
not in your own strength.
And God's like, come on, I told you this is what you need to do. I'm like,
it's so annoying.
Okay.
They're like so looking back in hindsight, you're just like, no, I knew that was stupid.
And as soon as you do it, you're like, okay, I feel better
every time.
So good. But I do think having that like those few people that you can trust with anything, and that they just love you and will pray, that is life-changing. And I think I didn't used to have that in my 20s, and I've found it later, and it's made all of the difference.
All the difference.
Yeah, because also there are people, they've like loved me into being more comfortable being myself all the time.
That's so beautiful. It really is.
Really,
So Nicole, when you spoke about having kind of your church life and your work life, and you felt they were very separate, how did you stop yourself kind of just really being in a bubble of either? And can you tell us a bit about how they merged, or what that was like for you?
So I guess I was feeling really convicted that I was working in this industry where so much of it didn't align with my church values, and I started to really realize how separate my Sunday life was to my rest of my week. And I questioned if I should even be in the industry. Honestly, I was like, maybe this isn't the right thing, and started to pray about it. That week at church, it was just this week where they were saying, okay, we're going to get like a few people from the congregation to talk about how like God is in their work life. And so this woman is like model actress, and she was talking about being in industry and how actually like there's no point being, well, not no point, but it's all very well being Christian in church, but God doesn't call us to preach to the choir. Like we need to be in the dark places to be a light. Like, and actually hearing that sermon that week when I'd really been questioning it all was just such a like strong confirmation from God to be like, no, this is where I want you to be, and I'm with you, so like don't worry. And I think that was a turning point for me. I think at that point, up until that point, there'd been moments where I was questioning, maybe I should do something else or, a different genre of photography. And from that point, I was like, no, this is definitely from God. Like, all my jobs, as I said before, it just seems to happen with, like, I work hard, yes. I'm not gonna, try and pretend that it just falls into my lap, but it feels God-given, like 100%. You can't deny it. Like, some of the biggest jobs I've had, I've been like, where did you find me? And they're like, oh, some list. And I'm like, what list? Like, I'm like, did God pass you this list? Like, and they're not even Christian. Like, it's not that they know something. Like, it's, I think from that point on, I was like, I felt God in my career. And I knew that even if I didn't have a Christian community in it, God was with me and God wanted me to be there and to use me as a voice. And there's definitely been moments where, some time has passed and I'm kind of like, what am I doing? Like, I've got dragged back into sort of the making money and like, working with brands because they're cool or whatever. But actually, no, the reason I got into this industry is because I want to make positive change. I want to like do X, Y, Z. And yeah, just God reminding me, like, I didn't put you in this industry just to like give you a cushy life. Yes. Like you're here for a reason. Yeah. So I think just knowing He's with me, it's not like I suddenly was like, I don't know, talking about fashion photography in church or talking about church and work. I don't think anything on the surface really changed. It was more of an internal change for me. And I guess just naturally it then kind of all
it was one
converged.
rather than two separate things.
Exactly.
Yeah. Caroline, do you have any experience of that? Like you were kind of nodding along before with Nicole of like you felt things were really separate for you. Was there a kind of point where that changed and you just felt more that you were living one life in different spaces?
100%. And I hadn't thought about it until you said it. So it's really amazing that you spoke about that so well. Because yes, I definitely used to have my life and then go to church on the Sundays and have like big, emotional, amazing God moments and then just go back to my
back to the 9 to 5.
Way of being. And I remember I wrote it in my diary. And I have it on my phone. I have a list of like thoughts and prayers and things. And one of them is, I want to be the same as I am with my friends in church all the time. It was like a goal for the year. So it was definitely an internal shift as well. But I think it was a decision. I don't think I knew I was hiding parts of myself, but I just felt a lot freer when I was with my girls who I've prayed with and the people from church. It's actually not all people from church. It's these main girls who I just felt fully myself with, and I don't think I'd had that before then, where I actually just was free to be all of me, and I saw that was okay. And God had been building that up, I think, through so much prayer and just through deepening my relationship with God. And so then I got to a point where I felt more comfortable in my skin, I suppose, and so I wanted to take that into the world. So it was a confidence thing, and it was a security thing, I think, with just really knowing that God loved me all the time, and then taking that energy into all of my life. And actually it was just really, really freeing and nice. And it didn't change much. It actually it changed me rather than anyone else around me. I'm sure people sort of noticed. I think my friendships shifted slightly. I think I just shifted towards different people.
I found that too.
And away from certain, I realized, I think when I stopped, going to the clubs as much. When I stopped that, I stopped seeing certain people. And it's just quite natural. It wasn't purposefully like, God doesn't want me to hang out with you.
They're not the good friends that message you and say, oh, I haven't seen you in a while, let's catch up. They very easily fall off. Like
we weren't that close. The friendship was based on something else. Which is amazing. So that's how I realised that.
Lastly, Nicole, for women who are maybe stepping into entertainment, fashion, whatever, what's kind of from your story and your experience, what kind of wisdom would you want to offer for women, especially at the start of that journey?
Wisdom. Yes, God, give me some of that right now. I guess, you know, what we were just saying about knowing you're not alone. Even if you are, you know, even if you don't know anyone else going into the industry or whatever, like, have people that you can speak to, like, whether it's a mentor, whether it's your best friend, like your partner, like, just don't do it alone, and don't be afraid. I think it's so important to, maybe it's because I'm an extrovert and I need to process things externally, but I feel like if you're not alone, you feel stronger, and you can do it. And sometimes you don't know yourself as well as the people who are closest to you, and they can reveal truths to you. Because like I've been, I remember, like, you know, some of the darker chapters of my sort of journey, where I thought I was happy and I thought it was how I wanted to live and whatever. And then looking back later, realizing that was never for me, and I knew it wasn't for me. And why did I try and convince myself that it was, you know, when my like best friends could absolutely tell that wasn't making me happy, like trying to live in like this way. So yeah, people who love you but can also call you out on those things and say like, this isn't good for you, and I think that's really important, is that it's not for everyone, and that's okay. Like you haven't failed by choosing to walk away or to stop or whatever. Like it's not for everyone, and just to, you know, to pray about it and to listen to God, because He has a plan for you, and if that plan is to be in industry where it can be really challenging, then He will equip you, as you said. Like He will, like, you know, make a way for you. It doesn't mean it's going to be easy, but it's like, have the people, like, lean on God, and hopefully that will lead you to where you need to be.
That's really valuable. Caroline, what about you? If there was one thing that you would say?
One thing, I think, to trust that trust God's plan for you. Trust like who God has made you to be. Don't try and be someone else, you know, because God is pretty incredible. He doesn't make mistakes. So to push deeper into that, to push deeper into understanding who God has made you to be, and trying to be that as much as you can. And just being like, just praying. I just think prayer is so powerful. Be filled with the Spirit, be filled with the love of God, and then go out, because you can go to dark places. Do you know, like, God does not want us to be afraid of the darkness. So go there, but when you're full, you know, and when you don't feel full, then step out, refill, go back.
That's
you know,
it. Ladies, thank you so much for having this conversation. I know for so many of the Magnify community, and anyone who watches this, especially when they're sat in the seats that you're sat in, trying to stay true to their values at work, and trying to stay true to our values when we work, it can be a challenge, but it is possible. And I love what you said, Caroline. We can be a light in a dark place. Like, you can be there, and it's okay. And just looking at how God uses us there. So thank you both so much for your honesty, for your vulnerability. This has been an amazing conversation. Thank you.
I've loved it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's been an honour to see Magnify grow to where we are today. If you've loved this conversation and want more from Magnify, why not check out our print magazine? Across the 10 editions, we've had the privilege of featuring a multiple of changemakers and pioneers, such as Suzanne Hendricks, Jerry Lorenzo, Joe Malone, and many more. The magazine is a beautiful physical product that makes the perfect coffee table companion to complement your space. And even more than the look, it creates the perfect excuse to take some time to read a collection of timeless features that will enrich your life, whatever stage you're at.
Head to magnifycollective.com/shop to purchase your copy now.
The Magnify Conversations mean so much to us as a team. It really impacts us every day and encourages us so much when we see your comments, your DMs, and to know that these conversations are truly making an impact in the best times of your life, but also challenging, is such an honour. We hope you've enjoyed today, and we can't wait to see you next Monday.